Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar hosted by One Spatial and focusing on the VertiGIS Studio software suite, specifically today reporting, workflow, and printing, and how we can wrap together these applications to make super efficient solutions. Apologies we're a little bit late there this morning. Hopefully you can see my slides. My name is Nicholas Johnson, and I'm a GIS consultant at the VertiGIS Studio team here at One Spatial. I've been at the company for over half a year now, but I've also been in the geospatial industry for a couple of years on top of that. And before I begin, I would like to go over a few bits of housekeeping today. Firstly, the webinar is being recorded, and we will share a link with you after the webinar is complete via email. We also welcome your comments and questions by typing these into the question panel, which hopefully you can see. We will collect them and address these at the end of today's webinar in the Q&A session. And if we don't get a chance to answer your question, don't worry, we will follow up with you afterwards, probably via email. So I'll go over the agenda for today's webinar. Firstly, we'll start with an introduction. I will talk a little bit about One Spatial and who we are and where we are. I will talk about our partner. I'll talk about our partners. I'll talk about specifically, of course, our partner VertiGIS and then the VertiGIS Studio products. And then we'll launch into the demonstration. And the demonstration today is going to focus on searching and analysis, which is VertiGIS Studio workflow, and then how we can present that search and analysis with VertiGIS Studio reporting and marrying that with a print from VertiGIS Studio printing. And then to close, I'll talk about how you can get started with the VertiGIS Studio products, and of course we'll have a Q&A session at the end there. So I'm going to start with a little bit about One Spatial in case you are unfamiliar with us. On the left there is a map of our offices, and you can see that we are an international organization. We've got offices all over the globe. And on the right there, you can see a collection of some of our customers. They are split into three main sectors that we at One Spatial focus on, and that is government, utilities, and transport. And these are some of our partners. We've got Esri, we've got version 1, there's Ordnance Survey, and there's Safe Software, aka the makers of FME. And of course, there's VertiGIS, and today we'll focus on VertiGIS. So we are the sole resellers of VertiGIS Studio products in the UK and Ireland, and you can see there again, there's some of our VertiGIS Studio customers, and there's quite a good mix there. We found that VertiGIS Studio is wanted by customers from all sorts of different sectors. So we've got conservation organizations there, and we've got utilities, companies. So a good mix of people want to use VertiGIS. And talking about VertiGIS and the software, these are the products that are going to be on show today. Like I say, we've got VertiGIS Studio workflow, we've got reporting, printing, and these are all going to be shown in the context of the web viewer today, which is going to be VertiGIS Studio Web. But we can use other web viewers. If you've got Web App Builder or Experience Builder very soon, you will be able to use VertiGIS Studio products with that. And it's at this point that I just want to mention that if you're unfamiliar with VertiGIS Studio workflow, it's probably because you've heard of it being called GeoCortex workflow or GeoCortex printing. And that's because recently in the last few months, they had a name change. So that's, I just wanted to clear that up. So I'm going to start by talking about VertiGIS Studio workflow. Workflow is all about extending the usability of your web viewer, whether that's Web App Builder or today will be VertiGIS Studio Web. And it's extending it by allowing us to build custom widgets using flexible, low-code configuration frameworks built specifically for ArcGIS. And then we have reporting, and reporting is all about gathering, organizing, and sharing your spatial data with meaningful outputs all in one document, such as charts and tables. And like I say, it's all about sharing your spatial data with the right people because you have the control over how you share your data. And similarly, VertiGIS Studio printing is all about how you can present your spatial data. Specifically, printing is all about generating quality, high-resolution print outputs in all sizes. And when I say all sizes, I mean all sizes. You can go right up to ANSI E with VertiGIS Studio printing. So enormous prints, should you wish. And I just want to cover VertiGIS Studio products and where they fit into the Esri ArcGIS stack. So in this slide, you can see that we've got viewer frameworks on the left-hand side. That's VertiGIS Studio Web and Mobile. However, if, like I say, you've already got your own web viewer, you might have Web App Builder, and you may even have Experience Builder, then you can also use the VertiGIS Studio products with these viewers. You can see the capability applications that you can use there. Like I say, Web App Builder you can use now. Experience Builder you will be able to use very, very soon. That's coming soon. And then moving away from viewers now and talking a little bit more about ArcGIS Enterprise, ArcGIS Online, and just to mention that the entire VertiGIS Studio suite is compatible with these and storable within these two cloud-based applications, so you can use either. And finally, for this section, just want to mention the on-premise and SaaS versions of the suite. And some products have both on-premise and some versions have SaaS, and hopefully you can see there which of those have which. And there are some minor capability differences between them, so it's important to mention that there's a difference. And today, everything you're going to see in the demonstration is being done in the SaaS, that's the subscription versions of the respective applications that you're going to see. And the last points I'd like to cover regarding the VertiGIS Studio suite are the bundles currently available when licensing VertiGIS Studio products. So first of all the products can be licensed individually. However, the three capability products that you will see in the demonstration today are all included in that first Builder Edition bundle on the left there. And if we wanted to include VertiGIS Studio Web there, we've only got to go one bundle to the standard edition. So now we can launch into the demonstration, and I will explain that the data scenario that we have today is all about searching and reporting of a data set. In this case today, it's natural nature reserves and the habitats within those reserves. And it's about how quickly we can have our user search a data set, search a web viewer, and how easily and how time effective it is for them to extract data out of a web viewer. Because previously, it's traditionally been quite difficult. Viewers have always been able to, you've always been able to search viewers and look for information in them, but actually getting professional and meaningful outputs from that viewer in the past has been something quite difficult. So today we'll show how when we use the VertiGIS Studio suite together and we use multiple applications, then we can get some great outputs out of our web viewer. So like I say, today's data scenario is someone who wants to produce habitat reports from national nature reserves, and the data for this, the data that you're going to see, the source comes from Natural England. It's publicly available data from the DEFRA Magic Maps site, and you can see there's a link there should you wish to explore that data yourself a little bit more. And just to reiterate again, the following applications being shown in this demonstration will be the SaaS versions of the VertiGIS Studio products. So I'm going to minimize the presentation now, and hopefully you can see my web browser. And you can see I've got 4 applications open here. I've got VertiGIS Studio Web, I've got Workflow, I've got Reporting and Printing open. Now, from the view of our end user for this data example, our user is only going to be using VertiGIS Studio Web. They're not going to need to use Workflow and Reporting and Printing because that's already been configured for them. In this example, they're just going to be guided through a workflow in the web viewer, but they're going to get out of that a professional looking report and a really high quality print to marry with that report. So I will expand from the VertiGIS Studio Web application. I will pop out the preview window. So we are going to be seeing exactly what our end users would be seeing if they were using this application for for real, if you like. So you can see that we've customized this web viewer to match what our end user wants to see or needs to see. And that is that they are greeted with welcome to the Natural Nature Reserve web viewer. Use the workflow in the I want to menu to start a National Nature Reserve habitat assessment. So as the end user, that's what I will do. I'll go to I want to, and I can start the workflow, initialize the workflow there. I'm first of all greeted with entering the name of, I'm asked to enter the name of a National Nature Reserve. So that's what I'll do. And today I'm going to choose Kevenham Heath because that is a nature reserve close to our One Spatial office in Cambridge. And it's also got quite an interesting habitat distribution. So I've entered that name there. And as I've entered it, I've only had to type in 3 characters and the autocomplete has finished that for me. So it's given me Kevenham Heath. And when I click submit, the workflow that you can't see that's going on in the background is automatically going to take me to the nature reserve that I'm interested in. And we can see here that we've got nature reserve, that's the purple outline, and there's a lot of habitat data in there. And it looks good, it looks interesting, but it's very difficult for me to tell what is really going on in this reserve. And let's say what the proportion of this reserve is a specific habitat. It's not very easy for me to glean that from this. And I could spend, as a user, I could spend time clicking through this web viewer and finding this information. But if I wanted to take that information out, perhaps in a table or, well, only in a table really, and then try and compile that into reports, I'd have to perhaps put it into a spreadsheet and start making charts out of there. And that's going to take far too long. And as a user, I haven't got time to do that. I want VertiGIS Studio to do all of the work for me. So I'm at the next stage of the workflow, I'm asked, would I like to generate a priority habitat report on my selected National Nature Reserve? And I'm going to click yes, because absolutely I want VertiGIS Studio and VertiGIS Studio Suite to do all the work for me. So you can see how quickly there, this solution is allowing me as the end user to, within a couple clicks and searching for the nature reserve I'm interested in, I am able to cut through my dataset, find the reserve I want to find, and now, excuse me, and now I'm waiting for VertiGIS Studio to do all the work for me, compile the report and compile the print. So very little work there, very little time that I've had to put into that. But if I move the viewer now, and we go back to our applications, we can have a look at what's been going on in the background and just how much workflow and reporting are doing the heavy lifting for me as the user. So I'm going to switch here to the VertiGIS Studio workflow application, and this is our workflow that we've just been using. And I will explain now at a high level just what's been going on in the background that our user hasn't seen there. And to start with, we've got the setup container where we're essentially just calling in the layer that we're interested in, which is the nature reserve layer, so that we can refer back to it later in the workflow. I'll go back out here. We've got our first display form. We saw that was when I was asked to type in the name of the nature reserve. And that was our user just had to type in the first 3 characters. Then they were given the rest of the reserve. And then when they click submit, we had an action here on the submit button. If I go to view the workflow in there, we've got within the workflow here, when the user clicks submit, the workflow is already going to set the map extent for the viewer. It's going to take them, zoom them into the reserve that they're interested in, because they may be able to type in the name of a reserve, but they may not know where that is. So that's the workflow is really guiding them there, and it's doing the work for them. Then we've got the question, would you like to generate a report? And it's simple, it's a yes or no question. And the workflow, if we follow it round here up to this if activity, the if activity is essentially deciding where the workflow is going to go based on what the user has input into that question. So if they've clicked yes, which of course we did, the workflow is going to go to the generate report part of our workflow. If the user, for some reason, they didn't want to report, click no, then they will be taken to the next part of the workflow, which is whether they want to generate a print or not. Of course, in this scenario, we did want to generate a report, so that's where the workflow took us to. And it started this part of the workflow. And essentially this section that you're seeing here is all about generating the report. And the key activity in this workflow is the run report activity, of course. And I'll just click on that and show you what's going on within that activity. So this is the URL of the report that I've got, which is generated every time I create a report in VertiGIS Studio reporting. The feature IDs here are coming in from the workflow, which the user has selected because they selected the National Nature Reserve name. We've got truth to include a map, because of course we want to map in our report. And the resulting file name, if I open the expression box here, the resulting file name part of this activity is quite a neat part of this activity. When we run a report through workflow, we can choose the file name that we're going to get the PDF that we are producing. And essentially what we've asked for here is for the name of the nature reserve that we entered into that autocomplete box, plus the word report. So it's going to say Cavan Heath report, but that would change if I had chosen a different report. It would then call it, let's say the nearest one is Aspel Close Nature Reserve, so it would be Aspel Close report. So that's quite a neat feature of when we run reporting through workflow. And then this display from the bottom here is going to give us the option to download the report and then continue on to the print part of the workflow. So this is where we are in the workflow. Now we'll take a look at the report and the report that's going to be produced for us, which I've opened up VertiGIS Studio reporting application here, and this is my report that is going to be produced for me. And you can see that there's two things I want to cover here. There's first of all the control that we can have with the data that our users are going to see, and there's customizability. So if I talk about control first, we can control, as an organization, we want our viewers to be able to look through the web viewer and kind of search the data they want to see. But when it comes to getting data out of that web viewer, it's important that the organization is able to control the information. And you can see that with this report template, the organization is able to do that very, very well, very efficiently. Because every time they produce a report, this is what they're going to get. And then in terms of customizability, you can see that I've been able to customize this report. Really, you can format your reports on any way that you could fit a report onto a piece of paper. You can do that. We are not confined with VertiGIS Studio reporting. We're not confined to cumbersome templates or predefined templates that have very little customizability. It's a drag and drop system here from the left-hand side that I then use. I can then drag over my items onto here, and I can move things about however much I would like. And you can see that I've been able to put in my company logo. I've been able to put in my company colors. I've got dynamic labels down here. I will get the current date and time, the page number, because I could have reports on multiple reserves. So it supports our page numbers in there. And you see the information that I'm going to get. I'm going to get information in the top half on my National Nature Reserve, and the bottom half is a chart that's going to describe the areas of my priority habitat. So that's it in VertiGIS Studio reporting. That's the template. If I bring back our web viewer here, we can see that our report is ready to download. So I'll click download here, and there we go. That's our report that we've been able to produce. On Cavan Heath, we've got a little map of our reserve. We've got some information on the reserve, the object ID, the name, the area. And then the really smart part of this report is the chart at the bottom here, which tells me, as you can tell by the title there, priority habitat types by area within the reserve. So essentially, it's telling me that 36% of this reserve is deciduous woodland. And that's all been done with only a few clicks and entering the name of a reserve. In terms of the work that our end user has done, they've been able to produce this report in a matter of seconds and with very minimal effort. And that's the power of wrapping together the VertiGIS Studio suite to create one kind of super solution, if you like. So if we go back to our web viewer here, we can continue with the rest of the workflow. So we've done our report, so now I'd like a print to marry with that. So I'll click yes, continue to print, and yes, I would like to generate a print. And we've got an error there. That's probably my poor internet connection. I'm going to restart the workflow there and try that again. So apologies for that. Let's have another go here. Let's try Kevin and Heath again. I will submit that. This time I will skip my report and I would just like to generate print. And that looks like it's working for us now, so sorry about that. So now if I go to VertiGIS Studio printing, or I'll tell you what, let's go to our workflow and have a look at what we've just been through there in the rest of the workflow. So actually in that example where we had my internet connection wasn't good enough, I had to restart the workflow, and you can see that when we got to this if question again, I clicked no, I didn't want the report, and so the workflow took me around this side here, took me to the generate print, and I've generated the print. And in a very similar way to how we generated the report, we have a run print activity here, which you can see has a similar setup where I'm putting in the URL of my print template. I can set things like extent, scale, and parameters, but I haven't done that today because I'm happy with the extent because it's just automatically zoomed in to my reserve on the workflow. And then the result file name, again, formatted this so that the resulting file name is going to be the name of the reserve plus the word print. And just to show that this was the report, so you can see we got that file name there when we ran the report. And now if I move to the VertiGIS Studio printing application, this is the print template that I'm going to get come through from the print that I've just run. And again, control and customizability are the main points to cover here. We have complete control over what our user is going to see, and we also get information back from our user. Let's say we have a lot of cases, web viewers are being used by many users, sorry. So we have down here a dynamic label which is going to tell us the username of the person who printed that report. We're also going to get the current date and time that report was printed, because maps, particularly in web viewers, are updated on the daily. So we want to know when this map was produced. So we've got those dynamic labels set in there. Of course, we've got a huge map picture box here. We've got the essentials of scales and scale bar, a north arrow. And that's the control side, and the customizability side, where I've got my company logo again. I've got my own title. And I want to touch on the legend here, because the legends of print templates are notoriously cumbersome, and in the geospatial world, we have a lot of customers come to us and they say, in the past, they've been disappointed with previous print template applications because the legend reduces the professional looking standard of their print templates. Because the legend is so enormous, especially in a case like today where we have habitat data, and there are hundreds of habitats across England. If I had every habitat symbology in this legend, well, it wouldn't fit. So the solution that VertiGIS Studio printing has for that is to enable a smart filter, and that is to only show symbologies that are shown in my map picture box here, which is a really neat way of dealing with the problem. So I could have I could have a reserve which has only got 2 habitats in it. So I don't want hundreds of habitats shown in this legend when they're not even being shown in on my map here. So enabling the smart filter will just show the 2 habitats that I have there. So that's VertiGIS Studio printing. And I can bring across now the print that we produced there. In fact, I'll bring across a number of example prints that we produced there. So this is the print that we've produced, and you can see that we've got a really nice high quality print from that output there, and we can marry that with the report that we just produced. And I'll just take you through the other examples here. These are examples that I've set up, that I've already run just to show you how we can have different reserves with different file names, with updated information on each reserve and the habitat distributions, and again a print to go with each of those. So that's our VertiGIS Studio solution essentially. And I'll have to sign back into the web viewer here. Sorry, my internet is just not having it today. Let me just sign back into my web viewer here. So hopefully you've seen there that we've got a solution that has required very minimal effort from our end user. They've only had to do a few clicks and enter the name of a national nature reserve. But what they've got out in return is a really nice professional looking report here, and they've got a print to marry with that. So that's the solution that we've produced, and you can see just how time saving it is when we use the VertiGIS Studio products and we kind of wrap them together like we have today. You can see just how efficient of a solution we can create. So that was our solution today, and I will stop showing the demo now. We'll go back to our slides and we can talk about how you can start to get how you can begin to use the VertiGIS Studio software. So I will present my slides again here. Here we are. So I've had the demo there. And now if you want to get started, you can start your 60-day free trial at apps.geocortex.com. Like I say, they've just changed the name, so they're still updating some of those. So that is currently the address you want to go to. And if you'd like to learn any more, we have the VertiGIS Studio training available from One Spatial. If you want to see our upcoming webinars, there's a link there. But we have got a vast archive of webinars if you select that link there. And particularly when I mention control, I talked about how we can control what our viewers see and the data they can view, and then the data they can pull out. And that's kind of doable within VertiGIS Studio workflow and VertiGIS Studio reporting, but it's also, we can enhance that by using something called VertiGIS Studio Access Control. And if you want to see how we can take controlling what our viewers see a bit further, then do go back and watch that webinar. And then we've got VertiGIS Studio support there, VertiGIS Studio community, and the documentation center there as well. And now we can address the Q&A session. So has anyone got any questions? Let's have a look at the questions here. Okay, one question. Do workflows created in Series 5 work on startup on a GeoCortex Essentials site? I'm not sure about that actually. That's something that I will have to action with my colleagues. Series 5 is essentially is the new version of workflow, and I should have said, sorry, that's what you just saw. You just saw Series 5 of workflow. I'm pretty sure you can use Series 5 workflow with Essentials, but I will get back with a firmer answer to that question. And our second question is, if a workflow is saved on ArcGIS Online and available to the public, can the workflow be hidden, or is it downloadable for any user to view and copy? Now I'm guessing that. Okay, I think I'm just trying to work out in what context that question is set in. If it was that you've got your workflow in ArcGIS Online and people are using it in the viewer, then as you saw, they can't download the workflow. They're just using the workflow. If you've got a workflow stored on ArcGIS Online and it is set to be available to the public, then I would imagine that it's viewable to the public, and because it's a JSON file, it's probably downloadable. However, like I said, if that's something that you're concerned about, if having your workflow viewable by certain people, like the public, is a concern for you, then perhaps you want to look at VertiGIS Studio Access Control, which gives you, which goes much further into the control you can have over what your viewers are going to see. And there's another question here asking, can images be inserted into workflow? Images can absolutely be inserted to workflow, and I can show you that really quickly here. If I go to our display form, our create form, then let's say at this stage of the workflow, they had asked for, we're asking if they'd like to generate priority habitat reports, and we could insert an image in here. I could just drag and drop that and insert the URL, and we could have an image that gives an example of the report that they're going to generate before they've decided to generate it or not, so they can see what they're going to get. So that's actually a really good question and a really nice part of workflow as well. Now, I'm aware that it's 11:34. We haven't got any other questions at the moment, so I think we will probably leave it there for today. But should you have any further questions, please do contact us with VertiGIS Studio at onespatial.com. That's our email address for the team. Or if you'd just like to speak to myself, that's my email address there, and send an email over to me and I will answer the questions that you might have. And I think we'll leave it there for today. Thank you so much for watching this with me. I hope you've been able to see just how much of an efficient solution we've been able to create by using the VertiGIS Studio suite in combination, and how easy it's been for our user with very little effort to get a lot out of their web viewers. And thank you.